all Mommy's family. Great supportive community, close-knit caring family. We're non-judgy, blanket fuzzy, stigma-free. All Mommy's family, friends, family, and community. We all Mommy's family. Teaching, sharing is our key. Great big thanks to you all.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Stigma Stompers, Nami Erie County, PA's one and only podcast. I am one of your hosts, Abby.
And I'm your other host, Janana.
Today, we have a special guest with us, Michelle Tobin, licensed clinical social worker and author. And I'm just going to let you tell us about you.
Okay. Well, as I said, I've been in practice as a licensed clinical social worker for a long time. I think I graduated in 92 and have been mostly in and out of doing practice, raising kids, that sort of thing. I myself am one of 12 kids.
Wow.
And I think that probably has a big part of why I'm helping others,
Yeah, I can see that.
It's like you have to learn to get along with people. You soon find out you're not the center of the universe. You're raised to help people, and I'm one of the older kids too. I also, my book and becoming a helper and a social worker, I also minister, I did that first, are the direct result of my experience. My oldest brother died in an airplane crash when I was 22.
Wow.
Or when he was 22, I'm sorry, I was 17. And then the next 5 years, going to college, kind of acting out my grief, not knowing why I was acting the way I was acting. There was no help for that sort of thing back then. We didn't, know how to address grief. I think also played a huge role in becoming a therapist because I was first a campus minister and then a therapist to college students because of my own trauma.
Yeah.
So it's fed everything I've done. And the book, my book, Home for the Bewildered, is set in 1974. That's the year he died. And, there's little bits of him in the whole story, little bits of me in the whole story, and my family, and kind of coming from large families, that sort of thing. Yeah. So, and I'm a wife and mother. My husband and I will be married for 40 years in June.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. 3 adult, wonderful children who are all good, solid people too, so proud of that. And I'm a chef. One of the best self-care moves I think I've ever made, and I acknowledge them in the book because it was such a wonderful experience. I went to, at 58, I went to the Ballymaloe Cookery School in Ireland and did their 12-week program. That's so cool. It was the most fun thing I've ever done.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So, and I use it, my interest working with college students was, always like, what are you eating? Are you drinking? Do you smoke? Those kind of things that you can't help what happened to you, but you can help what you're doing about it.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to do like a cooking therapy kind of thing, which is kind of the rage now. I was just that much ahead of my time. So no one was really interested when I was talking about it. But also, if they had been, I might not have written the book. So, but I still think it's really valuable, like to do that sort of thing, especially with college students. Teach them how to eat, teach them, self-care.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm a big believer in self-care.
Can you talk a little bit more about cooking therapy, like teaching people what to eat, how to eat them, but
there is a cool, really right at the same time I was thinking of it, I got back and this, and I actually just did a workshop with them. This program started through Harvard and the Culinary Institute of America called the Teaching Kitchen Collaborative. They teach doctors, people in medical professions, how to cook, and then go into communities and teach people how to cook, especially like in food deserts.
Yeah.
And there is a real move now toward nutrition and mental health, nutritional psychiatry, functional medicine, all super important in teaching people how to feed themselves and how to cook, because you have to really be intentional about that in our culture. Yeah, and it's going to be a big part of your mental health, whether if you're eating at fast food places versus cooking your own food. The people cooking their own food are going to fare much better. So I think it is vastly important, and it's a thing you can do for yourself. Again, you can't help your diagnosis, but you can help how you're managing it. So that's why I like to always include that.
That's amazing.
That feels like such a simple idea, but I don't think anyone really thinks of it like that. So
it gets less simple as we
Simple
go
and
on.
complex,
For me,
yeah.
it was more simple because that's how I grew up.
Yeah.
Even with 12 kids, my father would go to 6 a.m. Mass every day and then come home and make hot breakfast for us.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we sat down and ate. So they had 12 kids. It was a lot of chaos, but we sat down and ate together, and that's less likely now. I think positively, the having to be intentional about something is a positive thing.
Yeah.
So, you have to decide, I want to do this. I want to take care of myself. And then feel the effects of it, on your body, on your mental health, on your attitude, on your thoughts, So I think it's really important for people to teach if you know how to cook, teach other people how to cook, simple things, just including more whole foods, not going for what I consider poison.
Hey, that's fair. I'm glad you mentioned that, though, because I feel like for college students especially, it's so much easier. You're on the run to just grab something fast, drive through, let me grab something, head on out, because we're always rushing somewhere. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I know that's something for me as well, where it was like in college, it was easier to just grab something real quick instead of cooking something for yourself. So
yes, I think it's really important to teach, especially start those habits early.
Yeah.
So that you carry them through your life. And it's, I'm saying I'm a chef now, but I didn't consider myself one of the good cooks in the family. There were a lot of good cooks in my family, starting with my father. But my sister lived with us for a little while we were raising our kids, and she was a great cook, also social worker. We were like a year behind each other in the program. And when she moved out, I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because she was one of those people who could just open a cupboard and let's make something,
Oh, gosh,
I
wish.
could not do that. My mother got me Cooking Light magazine, and that is a really easy magazine to learn how to cook from, because they will say, and they're still around. And I actually just cooked my husband the lentil soup from my very first issue. I kept the very first issue of that. But it's like, put the lentils, the broth, and the next 6 ingredients in a pot, and that's what they would teach you how to do. It was like simple.
Love that.
So things like that make cooking easier. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I love that.
You touched a little bit on your personal mental health with grief and stuff like that. Do you mind sharing more of that personal story about your mental health journey?
Well, when I was, we were in a big family, and it was chaotic. I think my parents did, especially the more I do therapy, the more remarkable I think my parents were. Neither one of them had good parents, and I think they were intentional about trying to be good parents. Like when we sat down to eat, my father used to say, the best thing I can do for my kids is to love their mother, and he did, and he treated her well, with respect, valued her contributions. We didn't get to pick up our forks until she was seated at the table. So that was kind of always ongoing. There was a lot of chaos outside of that, They could not pay attention to all of us and our individual needs. But I wasn't really aware of that until my brother died. I myself, I think I was probably considered the smart one. There were the cooks, there were the artists. I was first to go to college, paid my way. I was class president all through high school. But when he died, I was a math and science person, kind of a straight A student until he died. And then everything, it's like someone took my brain and just went, put it back in. And I had no idea why. So I went off to college, and again, that this is in the 70s. No one was saying, "Oh, you're good at this. Do this." No one said that. No one said go to college. No one said anything like that. When I got into the University of Michigan, my dad was a big Catholic, so he was like, "Your grandfather's rolling over in his grave." There was no, because it was public, and they didn't like Notre Dame or University of Michigan. Notre Dame didn't get along. So I felt like I was really on my own, and didn't know I was depressed, did not know I was anxious. I was smoking a lot, and cigarettes, drinking a lot. Fortunately for me, I always had consequences. I experienced a lot of negative consequences. Unlike some of my siblings who then became alcoholics, I don't think the consequences were as stark or extreme as mine were. So the whole time I did not know that it was grief. I had just did not know. I did not know that there might have been counseling services available at the University of Michigan. I still don't know if they were available back then. I've developed that theory from since then of trauma that you learn in your system to handle that system. As soon as you step out, that's when you get pummeled by your issues. And I just felt like I was like, I didn't know who I was. It's like I didn't know, I was out of my mind kind of thing. Still I had 3 jobs. I was still going to class sometimes, still graduated. But the whole time I was like acting out of myself. And regrettably, I guess. On the other hand, when I look back, I think I had some real reaches for health. Like I was really trying, and I didn't know that either. I was writing a journal to my brother, writing him letters all the time. So I was trying to keep that connection alive to him and to me. And I was a big walker, still am. Walked all the time. So that kept that connection alive to me. So after a series of unfortunate events, I felt like I had an experience that I would call a miracle experience. Someone coming in and showing me that I was loved, which I interpret as God. And I quit smoking and I started swimming. And that was a lifesaver. Those two things, quitting smoking and combining it with swimming, was really a good idea. But what I did was I kept that pack of cigarettes where I could see it, and so I was telling myself, you have a choice. If you want to smoke, you go ahead. Swimming reinforced that you can't breathe, Right. But what really happened for the next 40 years until LECOM closed, every time I swam, I felt better. Every single time. And I recognized it, and I consider myself fortunate at 23, recognizing, wow, this feels good. Before I went swimming, my hands were like this all the time, always shaking. Did not know I was anxious. I had no idea what anxiety was until I started swimming and calmed down. Wow. So a big focus now throughout my, doing therapy with people is how to calm yourself down. That's what you have to do. We each have to do that ourselves. I can't make you calm down. We have to find ways to calm ourselves down. And that's where don't smoke, don't drink, don't take drugs, find a therapist, walk, swim. I still think swimming is the best thing because you have to breathe and you're using your whole body. And you can think while you're swimming. Yep. So my character's a big swimmer. The therapist here is, and because it worked for me for so long. Without a pool, I would say yin yoga, which you can find online, which is what I do now. I still walk a ton. I do a lot of yin yoga. I do the weights, do all those things you're supposed to do. You got to do what works.
Yeah, 100%.
Amazing. I like that you bring up that you found something that helps you, because I feel like when we're stressed or anxious, we tend to focus on that, what's happening and what's stressing us out and how we're feeling, instead of finding something, like you said, that helps us calm down. So I'm glad that you bring that up.
Yes, it's the first job, I think, for each one of us is to figure out what works to calm us down. And, you know, obviously swimming's not for everyone. I can't get anybody in the pool, it seems, you know. But find the thing that does work. Walking's the easiest. You can just step outside. And nature's really good for us. So, you know, this morning I've already walked, and, you know, I just try to look out and move my eyes back and forth, you know, and look at the horizon, you know, pray, whatever. It just, whatever works. I work on a mantra usually. Just to, it's a daily thing, you know. It's like it's a practice. We have to practice.
Right. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
It sounds like there was probably a number of things that contributed to you becoming a licensed clinical social worker. So how has your journey shaped your perspective on mental health professionally, personally, what have you?
Well, I value and pay attention to my own experience. I tend to universalize. One of your questions, I think, was, you know, I make a comment about that on my website. I think every theme is universal, but every experience is unique. So people's experiences is unique as their DNA, and that's what makes being a therapist super interesting. So I was good at paying attention to my experience and learning from my experience. So I don't know where I got that. You know, it's like I'm just grateful that I do. And then it helped me understand other people. So when I'm as a therapist, I try to find common ground. You know, of course, I didn't have the same exact experience as you, but I do know suffering. I do know loss. I do know struggle. You know, and so I can relate to you without having the exact same experience as you. You know, and I think that's what makes me a good therapist. And again, you know, being in a big family, you have to learn how to get along with a lot of different people.
Yeah.
You know, and understand their perspective. So I think all of that contributed, and I do think my own suffering just made me want to help other people not suffer.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially useless suffering. You know, useless suffering is the stuff we do to ourselves.
Yep.
You know? And that's where, like, if you can make these changes, it's not going to fix your past, but it's going to help you in your present. You know, like, what was I thinking this morning? Having faith. You don't have to believe in God, but if you have some kind of faith in a higher power, whether it's true or not doesn't matter, right? It helps your attitude. It helps you get through the day. It helps your brain rewire. So you know, it doesn't matter if it's true or not.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Anything that helps you get through that day, I think that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. So since you've worked with clients for over 20 years, what are some of the most common themes that you've observed in their struggles and their healing process and things like that?
The thing that bothers me the most, I think, is what we do to each other. What suffering is at the hands of other people. And I don't understand why we do it. And so there's a lot of trauma out there. And I think that, you know, so that's the biggest theme, is that kind of suffering and then the ongoing struggles, the repeat of history. The most fascinating thing to me is how we repeat history over and over again. You know, and it's like, I'm trying to get people not to inflict their suffering on the next generation. You take care of your stuff, then, I mean, we are going to a little bit, you know, because no one's perfect. But if you can work on your stuff and get help for it, then you're not handing it to the next generation to have to deal with. So that's the saddest part. I mean, everybody has loss, everybody has struggles, everybody has trauma. Everybody has to deal, I think we all have to deal with addiction now because of social media.
Yeah.
there's all some kind of thing that we have to deal with now. And like the food thing, that there's addiction built into fast food. So we all have to be really intentional now, but we have to be really intentional about helping ourselves manage our own emotions so that we don't inflict those emotions on other people. And so that's what I would say. I mean, it's common. Struggle is common. We're on Earth.
Yeah.
And so, again, you cannot help what happened to you. You can help if you inflict it on the next person or the next generation.
I say that a lot. Your mental health is not an excuse to treat other people poorly.
100%.
I say that frequently.
Yeah.
So, I agree.
Carl Jung said that a long time ago. If we each would just work on our own stuff, we're healing the world.
Yeah. That is very true. It's easy for us to think that things we're done with it don't affect us, but there's still those consequences in the back.
And we have to manage it, and it is a practice. I don't know how many times I do say that to my clients, like, you're not going to just be calm when you need to be unless you're doing the practice every day, whether you think you need it or not. My husband always uses a good analogy that, like some people just come into therapy when they're in crisis. When you have a hole in the roof and you only come in when it's storming, you need to fix the hole in the roof.
Yep.
So on a sunny day, you think, I don't need therapy.
Right.
But yes, you do. You're working on it before that storm comes again. So you put into practice things that can calm you every day so that when you need it, it's there.
Do you have any advice for individuals maybe who know that they're suffering, but they're afraid to take that next step to go to therapy? Because I personally know some people who, they know that they need some help, but they are afraid to, maybe they don't like to talk about what they're going through, or there's certain things. Yes, the stigma absolutely surrounding mental health still. Do you have any advice for them?
Well, I mean, I'm a therapist, and I've been through therapy, and I do think it's a good thing, most licensed people have to have gone through therapy, so we understand what it's like. So for me, it's fun. I mean, it's like, you're interesting, to some. The therapist should be interested in you, and then you get to talk about your life. Who doesn't really want to do that?
I know.
Right.
And so the best part of being in a good therapy, and that's, again, I really hope and believe my book shows what good therapy is like. Someone is hearing you, someone's understanding you, someone's giving you tools. To work on yourself. They're accompanying you on your journey. They're not fixing you. Right. Anybody who tells you they can fix you, well, they're lying. You're the only, so I can help you, give you the tools, be with you, encourage you, take up your cause, and I do. Like, your cause is my cause. But you have to pick those tools up and use them. But if you don't know what the tools are, how can you use them? Right. You can't know what you don't know. So going and getting help from somebody who's been trained and licensed, and I do believe in licensing because you're held accountable, and you have ongoing training. Since I became a chef, I've been certified in nutrition for mental health. You have to keep getting trained to keep your license. So. And if you don't like that person, I would give them 1 or 2 chances to, you'll know if they're really trying to understand you and hear you. And if they're not, then go to somebody else. But I think it's valuable because it always gives you that somebody else's perspective. That's not your friend or your parent. It's really hard to be objective as a parent or even a friend. When you have a stake in the game, it's really hard to be objective.
Yeah. And I also have heard people say, I've tried therapy before, it didn't help. But I like that you mentioned, sometimes it's just maybe not the right fit for you. Maybe it's someone else out there.
There is someone else out there. And most therapists, which again I do with my book, we're in it to help people. You're not in it for the money. you can. We don't charge. I've never made that much money because I've worked for the Catholic Church. You know, you're there because you believe in it and you want to help. But not everybody is a good fit, you know, and find the person who is. But they will be trying to understand you. They'll be listening. They'll be trying to hear you, accept you. They won't be judging you. And they're out there. There's a lot of good people out there.
I love that. Thank you.
I'm currently in therapy, and one of the things that I've learned is that my therapist could say nothing for 30 minutes and I'll be talking the whole time, and the problem will almost work itself out because I was able to just talk about it for however long I needed to.
Out loud.
And I had the solution and I spoke the solution.
Yes.
And so then I could put that into
You can't
practice.
hear the solution when you're ruminating. When you're just in your head, it's
Or
just
when
going
other people
around
are in
and
your
around
head.
and around.
Yeah.
When you are working it out with your therapist and you feel heard, then you can. And she's not, or he is not there again to fix it for you. You know, that she's allowing you or he to fix it yourself
Yeah.
Yeah.
and to come to your own understanding. Yes.
Yeah. It's really great. I think everyone should go.
I do too.
I also think there's a misconception that you need to have some kind of really traumatic thing in your life happen to you, and I think that that's just not true.
You
Like,
might just need to understand, you know, yourself.
yeah, you can have anxiety without anything ever happening to you, and
Well,
if you're not
something's always
coping with
happened
it-
to someone.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, there's no perfect life.
yeah,
I think we want a perfect life.
Yeah.
And we'll never get there. But there, you know, and that's why it's like you want to be kind because you don't know what that person's going through. You don't know. And yeah, there doesn't have to be some dramatic.
Yeah.
But yeah, you may just be struggling with life, you know, or direction, or comparing yourself to others and thinking you fall short somehow. You know, so I think working that stuff out with a therapist is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I kind of want to switch into talking about your writing and storytelling. So you've been writing for nearly 30 years. What finally led you to publish Home for the Bewildered?
Someone accepted it.
True.
I wrote. This is my third book actually, and my first. Well, the one I was just absolutely devoted to never got published. And that was called Bridget's Cross, and many similar themes. So I don't think I'll try to get it published now, but I may pull stuff out of it. But you know. I don't know why it took so long. I always thought my writing was good. You know? Another one I wrote was called Wrestling in the Mud with Dogs, and that was probably working out my own stuff, you know. And so in that process, one day I was talking to my sister. I'm like, I think I'm done with the wrestling book. I think I figured out, worked through it, and was done. So that's still there. I've always written poetry. But talk about my struggle. I mean, my first sets of rejection, Bridget's Cross, the universe, I think, has such a sense of humor in a way, but sometimes doesn't feel that way. But Bridget's Cross got rejected, I think, 3 times on St. Bridget's feast day. I mean, what's the message here, you know?
The universe.
It just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
You know, but again, it's like I might not have written this, and I do think this one's better, you know, and the themes that, but I also in that process worked out what's my theme of my message and the what's important to me. And what's important to me is speaking for people who are not being heard. So invisible people, and that's why the mentally ill, I want to speak for them. To give those people a voice. Bridget's Cross, it was mothers. You know, that was my theme. So apparently no one still wanted to hear about mothers, but the whole idea was not you don't know about the inner life of somebody. We just dismiss them by putting a label on soccer moms, or we'll say these things that just dismiss a whole group of people, and instead of realizing that they have lives, they have inner lives that are often, probably always, very rich, And when we dismiss whole groups of people, we're dismissing our own humanity too, and that's so nobody grows, kind of thing.
Yep.
So I wanted to give voice to that, and I think I was successful in Home for the Bewildered, and I thought I was successful in Bridget's Cross too, but I just rejection after rejection after rejection. First time I got rejected, I took to my bed, I was crying. Now I'm just like, whatever, you move on. But that was kind of my growth edge, that rejection, which is a theme that we all experience,
Yeah.
And so that's where some of these themes come from, and we each have to work them out in our own ways.
Yeah.
And then you have to trust that there's a plan.
Toughest part, yeah. Do you mind sharing a little bit more of what your book is about and where people can find it if they would like to purchase it?
Well, I'll say that first. I really hope and wish you would order it from Vine Leaves Press.
Okay.
Because they're a small, women-owned business. It will say in euros. Do not let that deter you. It's printed in the United States, and your credit or debit will, translate. When people buy, I hate to say this, but if you buy it from Amazon, I make so little money, and so do they. It's insane how little the author or artist, I suppose, what makes. So it's really helpful to the small business, to the small women-owned, publishing company, if you order it from Vine Leaves Press. So I would appreciate that. And what was the second part of that?
Oh, if you don't mind telling
the
us
book?
a little bit more about what the book is about.
So the book is about a therapist, Dorothy Morrissey, and she, in Home for the Bewildered, when I was at Ballymaloe, in Ireland, they call insane asylums homes for the bewildered. And I love that. I mean, it's like, I really feel like it's like we're all one tragedy away from being there,
Yeah.
And so I really resonated with that, and I immediately thought this would make a great book. And when I started, I thought it was going to just be about my a big family kind of thing, but it then just took on a life of its own. I knew I wanted it in '74. And again, it's that's where the universe kind of comes in. A lot was happening in 1974, in terms of the transition from asylums, and John F. Kennedy had wanted the asylums to close, where they were getting a bad name, but community mental health was supposed to be put into that. After he was assassinated, that just did not happen. So most, a lot of mentally ill end up in prison.
Yep.
Or on the streets. We still haven't figured that out.
Yeah, that's still a problem.
It is a big problem. So the systems that kind of make life worse for people, that's also addressed in the book. But again, I wanted this is about her and 4 of her patients, and again, I wanted to show the richness of the inner life. When I wrote Bridget's Cross, that was one of the criticisms I would get, it was too interior. People, I still think people's inner lives are really rich, and her interactions with each patient shows that. And then it intersects with the times and the times before, what happened to people. When I was doing the research for this, and I have this character, George, and he's there because he pleaded non-guilty by reason of insanity. And as I was writing, this is the synchronicity of it. There was an article in the New York Times about how people languish in asylums or institutions by pleading guilty or not guilty by reason of insanity, when they probably would have gotten out of prison much more quickly. It's they get lost in the system. So things like that. Ruth, when I learned, I was trying to figure out Ruth's story, and then learned about the Mississippi appendectomy that came on in NPR. I'm like, oh my God, and it helped me create her story. So it's all about the people, Dorothy's relationships with each of the patients, their growth. How her family and her story intersects with theirs, and how she's growing and working on her issues, and how her issues are reflected back to her by working with them. And, and again, that's what a good therapy will do.
Yeah.
It's mutual. You are learning from your client as much as they're learning from you.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I definitely want to check it out. I just haven't had a chance to yet, but it sounds interesting. So is it the 4 clients that are in there, is that personally what you have encountered in your book, or is it
every client has issues coming out of my life or my family, or I think some of the more pertinent issues or relevant issues of the day. So like Ruth is one of 12. George had a Catholic Church abuse, that sort of thing. Dorothy, obviously, I have a lot of similarities to Dorothy. She does therapy the way I would do therapy. She's a swimmer. I really wanted to show that, as a therapist, I'm thinking about my clients. Like, I would get up, swim first thing in the morning. My dad went to church. I went to the pool, but it was for the same reason.
Yeah.
Our own mental health, but also I would be swimming and I would be thinking about either my issues or a client, and sure enough, that stuff would come up that day, all day long. And so I kind of believe in that kind of flow. So each client has something, like Thomas. So Thomas, my brother was born in Japan. Thomas was born in Japan. These kind of things. Thomas keeps getting beat up on Thanksgiving. Or the day before Thanksgiving. That was the night before Thanksgiving is when my brother died in the plane crash. So we all feel like we're getting beat up the night before Thanksgiving every, not anymore, but for a long time. So there's these little they call them Easter eggs. I didn't really know that, but in Lansing, Michigan gets a lot of Easter eggs, references to Lansing. So it's more about my life, I would say. And again, I'm trying to touch on themes that are universal, not individual stories.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Your novel, you described your novel as like a fictionalized version of how to do therapy. What do you hope readers take away from that then?
That therapy's a good thing for sure. I hate on television or in media, or movies or whatever, where therapists are made to look out to be foolish, more foolish than anybody else, really. And again, I think most people, especially if they go through the whole training of getting to become a therapist, really are good at it, and want to do good, and are serious people with serious training, and therapy should be, it's hard and difficult, but it should be therapeutic. It should be positive. You should grow. And that's what good therapy will do. It will help you. This young woman really resonated with this book. I don't even know what country she's from. She's got a YouTube video. She talked about it she interviewed me, has a YouTube video, talked about it on some other, when she was interviewed about something else. So funny. But what I loved what she said, she's like, this was just one point in those people's lives. This wasn't the whole of them. And everybody needs help at some point in their lives. I was a hot mess in those 5 years after my brother died. I couldn't allow that, and I did for a while, allow that to define me. And and you have to stop that. Like guilt and self-punishing behaviors, that's that useless suffering I'm talking about. Learn what you can from experiences, and a therapist will help you do that. And then keep moving, I guess, into life. Allow yourself to enjoy life, the best you can. When we hang stuff over ourselves, we're hurting ourselves. No one else is doing that. We are doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So many times mental health books fall into the self-help category, but you chose fiction. Why do you think storytelling is such a powerful way to discuss mental health?
Well, I've learned from being a therapist and a person, we don't like to be told what to do.
Yeah,
So true.
I mean, like if everybody did what I told them, everybody'd be in the pool swimming, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people ask me, well, why don't you just write a self-help book? I don't think I'm good at telling people, like, well, my people may disagree with me what to do, but I feel like fiction illustrates it better, where you can then relate to it instead of feeling judged by somebody else, like, or you should be leading your life this way, you know?
Yeah.
So for me, it was a better vehicle. I still, someone has asked me, like, so now you're going to write a self-help book? No, I'm not. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to write another fiction book maybe, but I'm not going to write a self-help book.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you explaining that.
You've talked about giving a voice to the unheard. Who are the unheard voices in mental health you think need more attention?
Well, I'll tell you who I think needs help, who's not getting helped, and that is people who are violent and angry and behaving. The one area we haven't stigmatized that we need to stigmatize is violent behavior and outbursts of anger. If you're acting out on your anger, you are not stable. You're unstable. And for some reason, we have normalized that. We've been taught to fear the mentally ill. The people that are being diagnosed, if you're being diagnosed, you're being helped. Someone's, and in this book, In Home for Bewildered, I address that, that Thomas is beaten up the day before Thanksgiving. He's the one who ends up in the hospital, not the people who beat him up.
Right.
That's a sign of mental illness if you're beating somebody up. If you're bullying, whether you're beating them up from your words or your fists or with guns or whatever, or your actions, get help.
Yeah.
Deal with that. It's the same. It's like we all have to learn how to manage our own emotions. So if you're trying to control somebody, that's an act of violence. That's not up to you. So that's where I feel like that's a group that hasn't been helped because we haven't defined it as an illness. And it is.
Yeah.
And I wish we would.
Yeah. I've never ever thought of that. I feel some people become violent, like you said, either with physically or with their words. And it definitely is just dismissed as, oh, that's just who they are, or they'll even say like they've went through something, so that's just who
We've
they are.
normalized it.
Yeah, that's wow.
That's true.
Never thought of it that way.
They need help, probably more than anybody else. Why? Because they're the ones inflicting it on the next generation. They're not taking responsibility for their own emotions.
Yeah.
Very true.
That's true. I've never thought of that either.
But they have trauma, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't become like that without
No.
trauma.
Not at all.
Yeah.
You're mimicking what happened to you into the next generation.
Especially as like kids, what they say and do is what they see and hear. So like
Yes.
kids bullying in school, this is what they're seeing and hearing. Oh wow.
If you're a bully, you need help.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. I feel like every podcast interview that we do, we learn something new every single
Or
time.
there's something that seems, like I said, like it seems simple and would be common sense almost, but it's not.
I
Like
know.
angry people needing help would seem like common sense, and it's not. So that's fascinating.
I would think greed's another one. I think, you've got a really empty well that cannot be filled. Why? That's the question.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That goes back to everyone needs therapy.
Everyone needs
Everyone should go to
therapy.
Even if you don't think you do, you probably do. Yeah.
But, and again, I think back to also your question, I mean, the luck of the draw in terms of your genetics too. There's a lot of depression in my family, alcoholism, bipolar 2. We each have to find the right therapist, the right doctors. And, I would say too, I love this new functional psychiatry thing that's coming up, where they also teach you how to eat right, what habits can help or hinder your progress. So no matter what your diagnosis is, you have to take your life into your own hands and do whatever's necessary.
Yeah. Absolutely. Going back towards the stigma side of things, how do you balance portraying the realities of mental illness without reinforcing stereotypes and stigma in your writing?
Well, hopefully I was successful at that. And it's because, and I address the therapist's anxiety about it. When you hear about someone and their issue, or someone, says it, or it's in writing, it's scary. You're like, oh, no. And then you meet the person, and you're like, oh, you're great. You learn their story, then you understand them, and then it's not scary. And that's how I tried to deal with it. When Dorothy hears about Thomas being a repeat or frequent flyer or something, or that he has bipolar, or that someone's borderline, or we throw those things at those labels, and you hear them, and then you have an idea in your head. That's where the stigma comes from.
Yep.
You meet that person, and you hear that person's story, then all that goes away.
Yeah.
Then they're an interesting person, and I really hope that comes through in the book. And that's where the taking the stigma away from that. There's, and like I said, the way the world is today, we're one tragedy away from being ourselves.
We've said that. I think it's you that said that before, or someone in the office. We're one tragedy away from severe mental illness, from homelessness, from all kinds of things. So I feel like keeping that in perspective when meeting or hearing about other people
It gives you
is
compassion.
important. It could be you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, you have no idea.
And when you can pay attention to your own experience, then you can have compassion for other people's.
Yeah.
100%.
I love the one saying that I've heard, I think it was on social media actually that I heard it. We tend to judge others. Like, for example, someone won't give money to a homeless person because they might say, oh, they're going to use it on alcohol, or they're going to use it on, cigars or something like that. But then when we look at our own lives, you have a tough day at work and you come home and you have a drink. But that, we're stigmatizing and looking down on these individuals because they don't have money, when to them, they're doing the same thing. Their life is tough every single day. So for them, using that money to buy alcohol or something helps them in that moment. But we don't think of it like that because we judge right away and jump to a conclusion.
Yeah, we've been taught in our culture to blame the victim, to blame the individual.
Yeah.
The systems are really unfair. We continue to traumatize people with our systems. And we make their lives unnecessarily difficult. And then we blame them when they don't manage it well.
Yeah.
And my husband has it's a great word, and it's not, he didn't come up with it, but it's confabulation. We have an emotion, and we look for a reason for our emotion. So we want to blame other people. We want to blame groups of people because we are having a bad day, or we're having a bad day, so we come up with an excuse to have a drink. And these are the things that are in our, or to waste our time, and we are all doing it, but it's easier to judge than it is to deal with your own shit, basically.
Yeah.
And so, again, I'm a huge Carl Jung fan. That's the kind of therapy I did for myself, and that idea of projection, and that we're all kind of living out the human experience, and we have to work on ourselves.
Yeah.
It's the most important thing. And then we're less judgmental of others, you know, because when we understand we could be in that person's shoes.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
But we also have to deal with these systems where individuals are hiding, that are hurting, actively hurting other people.
Yeah.
Corporations are filled with people.
Yeah.
Our government, people are doing these things.
Yep.
You know, we have to, but that's, if we can keep everybody suffering, then no one's got the energy to look at what's happening, you know, because they're too busy having to try to deal with their own stuff because they can't buy a house, they can't afford health care, they can't get access to therapy, they can't afford groceries, they're in a desert, you know, a food desert, they're in a transportation desert, you know. We keep people suffering and we don't need to. That's what bothers me.
A lot of times they're profiting off of
People suffering.
So yeah, they're going to keep them suffering so they can keep making the money off.
You know, and this is the stuff where it's like, will you just please go to therapy?
Yes. Sometimes I want to beg people. I'm begging you to go.
Right? Instead of making us all pay. You know?
Yeah, 6 people are going to therapy when you could have just gone.
Yep.
Exactly. Exactly. And I wish, you know, when I look at, you know, even with my own stuff, and my husband had his own stuff, and, you know, we can come together at a wounded place, and we can either tear each other down or we can build each other up.
Yep.
And I hope that when I come to the end of my life, that I've created a peaceful, loving life. And I really wish that other people would do that. Like, don't you want that?
Yeah.
Like, to be able to go home and have a peaceful, loving life, and your kids know they're loved, you know what I mean? And that other people feel better for your existence, not worse. I just wish that people could get there, you know?
That's another thing that feels like common sense, but it's just not.
It's just not.
I don't know where it's lost in translation, but
because
it's just
they
not.
can't deal with their own stuff.
Yeah, ultimately it comes down to that. Yeah.
And it's just like some, you know, I think, and that's the thing. It's like you see somebody who's homeless. That didn't happen by accident. That is a lifetime of trauma.
Yeah, absolutely.
Severe trauma.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What are some of, and I guess your professional opinion, what are some of your preferred or favorite resources for individuals who might be struggling with their mental health?
Okay.
It could be specific, general.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, get outside and walk. That's one of
free.
the best.
Yeah.
Right. I do my own practice. Part of my own practice was, like I said, I wrote my brother to keep that connection. So if you're grieving, I think that's a really good exercise. It's just write to that person. Tell them what you're suffering. Tell them what's going on. Swimming, like I said, I think is phenomenal if you can find access to the pool or the lake in the summer. I'm a big chicken. I did do that bay swim. But mostly my husband says I meet my thrill quotient by staring at the bottom of a pool. But anything that makes you breathe and use your body, you know, you have to release trauma through the body. So yin yoga, I think, is fantastic. I do yin yoga with Cassandra with a K. Travis Elliott is fantastic. And a guy, Matt, who is open about his own trauma, but it doesn't dominate. Those are the 3 people I do on YouTube. You just have to subscribe. You don't have to pay. There's yoga studios here that are good to go to. Eat well. Make your own food. That's, you know, eat whole foods if you can. Surround yourself with nice, supportive, kind, loving people. And set really strong boundaries with those who are not. I would say cultivate a spiritual life. One of my clients, bless her heart, wrote like a devotional, and shared it with me, and I've been doing that every morning, and it's wonderful. It got me back to looking at my Bible again, which I hadn't done in many years, and it helps me deal with all the stuff that's going on right now. Not to start my day doom scrolling.
Yeah, very easy to do.
Yes,
Too easy.
very easy to do. So I'm starting my day, and it does bring me back to when my husband and I were young, and we used to talk about our dreams when we woke up. And now it's like stare at a screen, but this has gotten me back to doing some of that. It's like, and pay attention to how you feel. It's like it's not going to work right away.
Yeah.
Nothing does. So even if you think medicine's going to help, it's not going to help right away. So you're building and you're paying attention to how you feel each time. Rule out the physical. Maybe you're depressed. I was so hypothyroid, and by the time I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, my doctor was like, "You're almost dead."
Oh, wow.
And I was swimming and doing all this stuff, and I would just fall because my legs were like not working. I was frozen on Devon Avenue in Chicago. It's Devon Avenue. Anyway, it's a big street. And one day I just couldn't walk. I was just standing there. And, I had no idea. And again, the one doctor I was going to was like, "You're fine. You're just eating too much," or whatever. You got to find someone who will listen to you.
Yeah.
So you rule out physical causes because you just never know. And then also recognize that physical and mental are the same thing. I think another important thing, too, is when somebody does have a mental illness in the family, every family member is affected. Same with a chronic illness. Every family member is affected. So you don't just help the one. Everyone needs help.
Yep. Yeah.
And a mental illness is harder because you can't see it. If you have a broken leg, you can see it. Like, "Oh, I'm sorry, you got a broken leg." Depression, people don't understand depression. Well, get over it.
Yeah.
Well, what if you can't? That's the luck of the draw genetically. There are things you can do, but people don't see it, and so they don't understand it. So I think that's a lot of where the stigma comes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But again, I think behaviors are a really important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to the book, what's the most rewarding responses that you have received in regards to your book?
I've been really pleasantly surprised because I had so much rejection, literally 30 years of it. I mean, this book deal came on my 65th birthday. So that was that's a long time of writing. But people have reached out, have like really resonated in a deep way with it because I feel like people by reading it have felt heard themselves. They've been able, I can't tell you how many people like come up to me and like, "I have anxiety. I didn't even," they're telling me what's happened in their lives because they felt heard by reading the book. That's been incredibly rewarding.
I love that. That's amazing, especially that people can connect to it and feel so comfortable to share their personal stories. I love that.
I think I gave them permission with the book. Yeah, I gave people permission to express their own suffering.
I love that.
Are there any future book plans in the works?
I am now. Dorothy's not going to be the main character in the next book, but she's going to be the therapist again in the next book. But the person who comes to her is going to be the main character. And this time, I think I'm not. I haven't fully worked it out yet. Going back to Lansing, it'll be in the 80s instead of the 70s, and it's going to be surrounding the story of a nun.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So another group that people aren't paying attention to.
Yeah.
And my aunt was an Adrian Dominican, and the woman, my husband and I have a great get-together story, and my spiritual director was involved, and so she was an Adrian Dominican as well. So it's going to be the Adrian Dominicans. They're badass too. I mean, they all have. They really value education, and so they all have a lot of education.
I love that so much.
So they're the next ones. But it is going to be one of those things where you're only one tragedy away kind of thing.
I love that. I'm super excited to read this one and see the next one when it comes out.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to add that maybe we haven't touched on yet?
One line that I really like that I wrote in the book is, if your life can be ruined suddenly, why can't it be saved suddenly? We're much more likely to believe the negative in our lives. We listen to the negative voice more than we're listening to a positive voice. You know, if you gave as much time and attention to the positive voices, your brain will literally change. You know, and it's not fake positive. It's just looking. One of my friends is like trying to do this practice of writing down what she delighted in that day. Was it a bird? Just little things, you know, that change your brain, and it really does work.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. We need to start doing that a little more.
I had done a thing, I think it was 2024, where I had started to every single day write down something that I liked. It could have been like what I had for breakfast. It could have been something someone said to me. That fell off because habits take a while to build. So it was only a couple months that I did it, but it was helpful.
I'm trying to do that right now on my walks. Like, think of 9 things that are good or you're grateful for, and then I'll be halfway through the walk and my mind goes elsewhere, and I'm like, how many have I done? I don't even know. You know, but it's like you're trying, right? It's it's a practice. It's not perfection.
Yeah, that's all you can do is try.
That's all you can do.
We're all
Try your
literally
best.
just human beings.
And I
living
think
for the
most
first time.
human beings just want a peaceful life. And most human beings are trying their best, you know? And so let's support each other in that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for being here with us and taking the
My
time
pleasure.
to share your story and a little bit about your book. If you want to show the camera your book one more time, and
Is that the camera right
again, yep, and then just one more time, let the audience know where they can check it out.
So it's Home for the Bewildered by Michelle Tobin, and it's Vine Leaves Press. Please. That would really help them a lot,
Awesome.
and me.
Thank you so much. And if you're interested, you heard it here, where you can check it out. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for listening.
Thanks for your work.
Of course.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Stigma Stompers Podcast. We truly appreciate all your support.
If you want to see more about what we do in our community, make sure you check out our website. It's namierie.org. Make sure you also click on our t-shirt store tab so you can buy a t-shirt. We get a portion of all the proceeds. And make sure you sign up for our newsletter. It has all of our programming and event updates.
Another way you can get involved is if you feel comfortable sharing your personal story. You can email us at info@namierie.org, or you can give us a call at 814-456-1773.
Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye.